Hello and welcome to All Aboard TII's Accessibility Podcast. This is a podcast about accessibility and sustainable public transport brought to you by Transport Infrastructure Ireland. I'm Claire Scott and I'm joined by our All Aboard podcast host, Sarah O'Donnell. Throughout the series, we'll be hearing first-hand accounts from people who use and design public transport systems and specifically the role accessibility plays in these experiences. And who is this podcast for? In the first instance, we hope to connect with people with disabilities who use our services. But also, it's for anyone who is drawn to human interest stories and has a curiosity to learn more. And of course, we hope to attract listeners who are designers and decision makers for transport systems, who through the podcast might get a better understanding of some of the problems and potential solutions that are out there. So without further ado, let's give this a go and get all aboard TII's Accessibility Podcast. Hi Sarah, so what's coming up on this episode?
Hi Claire. So for this episode, I'm out on site in Lewis Finglas, North Dublin, and joined by some members of the Lewis Finglas design team. Basically, we go from stop to look at what those areas look like now and what they'll look like in the future when the Lewis Finglas project is built.
A short production note. As Sarah mentioned, parts of this episode were recorded on location, and while we hope this enhances the listener experience, there may be a small impact on sound quality in parts. Please enjoy.
I'm here on site at Broombridge Interchange in North Dublin, and I'm joined by some of my Lewis Finglas design team colleagues to talk about the future Lewis extension from Broombridge to Charlestown. So Marcello Corsi is the Lewis Finglas project manager, Emer Fox is the project landscape architect, and Deirdre Miller is the communications officer. So it's a lovely September afternoon and we're planning to walk the route and hopefully paint an audio picture of this great project. Marcello, if I can start with you, can you maybe give a broad outline of the project for listeners, just to set the scene?
Sure, thanks Sarah, and hello everybody. Marcello is my name. So as Sarah introduced me, I'm the project manager for Lewis Finglas. We've been working at this project for the last, I'd say, 3 to 4 years almost. So the project is a very interesting one. It's an extension of the Lewis Green Line, essentially, from Broombridge, which is the current terminus, towards the north to Charlestown, almost at the M50. It is about 4 kilometers long. It counts 4 new stops between Broombridge and Charlestown. There is a new park and ride for about 350 car parking spaces, and then it provides new cycling and walking facilities along approximately 60% of the tracks. The journey time to the city centre is expected to be in around between 25 and 30 minutes from the terminus at Charlestown, and the line is expected to be completed in 2035, according to the current National Development Plan. There are hopes that we can anticipate the construction start, and therefore we could be able to deliver the line earlier than that. But at the moment, according to the National Development Plan, is 2035 in operation.
Okay. So hopefully a little bit sooner than that.
We all hope that.
Okay, so I mean we're standing in the interchange, like I said, and on one side we've got the Lewis platforms, they have services into town, and then immediately beside that we've got the Maynooth line, the Irish Rail line, with services into the city centre and out to Maynooth. And we also have, you might be able to hear them in the background, bus services pulling up. So Marcello, how will this interchange change once Lewis Finglas is in place?
So really the interchange won't change too much from what is there today. We are providing the same level of facilities in terms of interchange. It's just that there would be passengers interchanging to a longer Lewis line, if you know what I mean. So The Lewis is not only from here going to the city centre, but is also going to Charlestown and vice versa. There will be people interchanging here coming from the M50, coming from Charlestown. But essentially, the Lewis will extend first, goes west, and then north towards the Tolka Valley Park. And there is a big bridge structure that will pass over the existing railway and the canal here. So we can speak about the bridge maybe a bit later. It's a long structure, about 150, 170 meters altogether, a curved bridge, which will be aesthetically very, very beautiful. We're all working together towards that. There will still be a level access for wheelchair, prams, and all the users between the Luas and the Irish Rail outbound platform. And the existing lifts and stair structure will be used to access Irish Rail city-bound platform. There are some ideas whether we're thinking whether or not to extend the existing overpass of Irish Rail to just go to the other side of the canal, because one thing that we'll have to change is the existing steel ramp that now is accessing from Broom Bridge to the inbound platform of Irish Rail.
From the old humpback bridge there's a steel ramp that brings you down.
There is a steel ramp at the moment that brings pedestrians down to the inbound platform of Irish Rail. That ramp, unfortunately, will have to go because it conflicts with the new Luas Bridge. There is no clearance. So we're looking at solutions, at options there to keep that kind of connectivity from the bridge to the inbound platform of Irish Rail. There will also be an interchange plaza, pretty much as it is today, with bus set down, vehicles set down, and taxi services in the area. And then a secure and well-designed bicycle hub here. We're thinking about under the bridge, which could be secured and glazed all the way around, which will bring activity and passive security to the area.
Yeah, excellent. Nice, a bit of life. And Deirdre, you're the communications officer, so it'll fall to you to, try and seek feedback from people on the project. And just in terms of say for example, the ramp coming down to the Irish Rail platform, what kind of feedback will you be looking for from user groups?
Well, I suppose we'll be trying to get a sense already of how people use the space now. And like anything else on Luas Finglas or any of our transport projects, we're trying to improve all the time and not leave anyone with less than what they currently have. So we'll be trying to get a sense of how people use the space, how they arrive here, where they go to, the numbers heading towards Minutze versus town, and how people literally get on to the existing platform, and from there you mentioned the ramp, and then talking to the same groups that we talked to find out how people are using the space now. We want to get their feedback on any proposed changes. So Marcello had mentioned the ramp, and we're looking at that has to go, so what will we put in its place? And you don't want to leave anyone at a disadvantage, and really engaging with, say, user groups or disability groups to engage firsthand with them and listen to their feedback on what we're proposing, because they're going to be the ones using the service.
And then just in terms of services here, I know there's buses to Tyrrellstown, and they'll continue.
They will continue, and I think what's important is that we maintain enough space for drop-off facilities, because not everybody is walking to, not everyone's going to walk to this stop, to the interchange. Some people will be dropped off. Others, like ourselves today, might arrive on bikes, and you've mentioned the secure bike parking that we're hoping to put in, so that'll be a big improvement. But for those who are arriving maybe from town out here and going on further afield by bus, we need to make sure that interchange is as smooth as possible.
Perfect. That's great. So really, just looking at Broom Bridge, when we're facing the Irish Rail platform now, what we'll see is a rising ramp structure that'll be going in the direction of the historic bridge, and then it'll turn northwards over the Irish Rail and over the canal and head up north towards Finglas. So maybe if we just head up that way ourselves now, and we can talk further once we get to Tolka Valley Park.
Great.
Thanks all.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, so we're standing now at the south entrance to Tolka Valley Park at Ballyboggan Road, and the tram will have come, it'll have left Broom Bridge interchange, it'll have crossed the Irish Rail, it'll have crossed the canal, and it'll have come down Broombridge Road. Can you maybe describe that, Marcello, for us?
Yeah, Sarah. So exactly as you said, the tram will have crossed already over the canal and the railway, and then it would have chased kind of the road, Broombridge Road, because Broombridge Road goes downhill towards the Tolka Valley Park.
Yep.
So our ramp is chasing the road and finally will touch the ground just before Lagan Road, which is the junction before Ballyboggan Road.
Yeah.
Then we cross a grade Lagan Road and Ballyboggan Road, and finally the line enters into the Tolka Valley Park and crosses over the Tolka River over a new structure.
Okay.
There will be a new bridge just parallel, very, very close to the existing stone bridge over the Tolka River.
Okay. And Emer, so just on Broombridge Road, there's a proposal to just connect the Royal Canal Greenway and Tolka Valley Park. How will that look?
Well, what we really recognise is that there's a great opportunity to link these two important green routes. So you have the Greenway along the Tolka Valley Park, and we have the Royal Canal, and what we'll be creating hopefully will be a nice green link between those two really important amenities. So we'll be bringing in street trees. There's quite a gradient on the road, so we'll be looking to have benches and places for resting spots, but really having a comfortable and pedestrian and cyclist and public transport priority link between the two. So I think it'll be a fantastic way to link these amenities.
Yeah, because at the moment it's very industrial, very tight
hostile.
and very hostile. Yeah. Very good. And now we're standing in Tolka Valley Park itself. There's the beautiful constructed wetlands and there's the old bridge. How will it look once Lewis is running through the park?
Well, Lewis Finglas is really unique in that we're actually not in a core city area, so we're heading out and linking up a number of green spaces along the route. And presently, a lot of those spaces have railings around them, restricted access, and that's how they traditionally were managed. But Lewis is going to be an open tram, so we're going to have open and clear links between all these green spaces, which will be great to have these safe, accessible routes going along by the track. So in Tolka Valley Park, we will have this new use, I suppose, in the park. It'll be a public transport, it'll have a green track on it, and alongside that we will have cycling footpath, and we'll be looking to design it with areas to rest, with tree planting, with really good quality finishes. So we'll get this really good route linking up these green spaces, and it'll make them much more accessible, safer and open to a lot more uses, we hope.
Fantastic. And I think people probably maybe with mobility issues will be pleased that there is that separation between maybe higher speed bikes and walkers.
And we're also, because we are in a valley, there's a topography, there are slopes coming down to the river, so we really want to make sure that we don't have slopes that are too hard to navigate, and that we will have different routes for different users, so we'll get as many people able to travel along the routes with as much comfort as we can.
Excellent. Now one of the
Sorry if I cut across you
not
there.
At all, no,
can I just add, I don't know if we spoke about the grass track, that in green areas we're going to make extensive use on this line for the first time of grass track, which is essentially is a track immersed into the grass system. So you barely see the rails sticking out of the grass. That means that there won't be any slab, any concrete visible, any ballast as the traditional stone kind of railway environment. And this blends very well with the environment of parks, as Emer was explaining.
And no trip hazards then as well?
No trip hazard, because the rails will be flush with the grass.
Very good. And absolutely, it'll be more quiet as well, I suppose.
It is going to be very quiet. It's actually the quietest track system that we have in Dublin.
And that means, I suppose, that in areas like the park where you might have runners or cyclists or kids running around, that we'll need to design the crossings really carefully, and we'll be using planting to highlight them. We'll be using really visible materials at those crossing points, so that it's a combination of hiding the system in the park in a way, but also highlighting areas where you will be needing to cross, and that's part of our design strategy.
Yeah, so it's instinctive that people will they'll feel at ease with the way the tram moves and they'll know where to cross through landscape cues.
Yeah, and that we're assessing pedestrian movement, so we really want to make sure we're putting crossings where people cross.
And actually, on that subject, you and some others on the team have done some excellent work on just trying to analyse how people use the park at the moment, and then just work that back into the design. And you used, if you want to maybe tell people about the surveys that you've carried out.
Yes, well, one of the issues with a lot of transport projects to date is there's a huge focus on car traffic and how many cars there are and where people are moving to, but because we're going through open spaces, we really wanted to understand how people use the spaces, because understanding who is in the space, and more importantly for us who isn't in the space, means that we can design for those users. So for example, we used a survey developed by a Danish landscape architect called Jan Gell, and that allowed us to see how many older women were using the space. Gender comes into it, age comes into it, whether you're alone or with kids, whether you're commuting or whether you're there to enjoy a space. So by understanding who's using the park, and we can see gaps where people don't use the park, so we're going to try and design with those particular groups in mind to bring as many people out onto the street, because the more people that are out in the parks and along transport corridors, the safer they are.
Fantastic. I think that's, so innovative, and hopefully it'll just lead to really lively and well-used spaces for everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're going to move up through Tolka Valley Park and up St. Helena's Park, and we'll maybe chat again at the top of the hill. Okay, so we're now at the top of St. Helena's Park, just beside St. Helena's Road, and we've got the resource centre, St. Helena's Resource Centre, and the creche beside us. Emer, maybe if you'd just like to describe what St. Helena's Park is like at present, what the setting is, and then maybe talk about, again, how the Lewis is going to change it, and even, we're beside Farnham Park as well, so you might want to talk about that too.
Yep, St. Helena's is a funny space in Dublin in that it's very much cut off from the surrounding housing areas, so it's nearly like a leftover space. And we, by bringing through the Lewis and the walking and the cycling routes, we're going to open up this space, and there's railings all the way around it at the moment. So again, getting rid of the railings mean that we'll have these connections between the open spaces. And one of the amazing things about St. Helena's is that Finglas is actually quite high. You don't realise, but the slope, the hill up from the river, means that at this height you have amazing southern views over the Dublin mountains. It's going to be a south-facing slope, so it'll be a fabulous place to take a stroll, to take a walk. It'll be secure because we have people moving all the time on the Lewis. We'll have a stop up at the top of the park here, which is beside the creche and the health centre, so we're hoping to get connections between those, so we'll get people moving around in a space that is very much underused. Having said that, there's also great wildness up here, and we want to keep that. So when we're putting in, say, the grass track and grass areas and planting, it'll all be very much focused towards biodiversity and having a very soft feel to it. But we're also really aware of visibility and access, so that's going to be it'll make it a much more usable space, and rather than being a buffer between housing areas, we hope it'll be a link in Finglas.
Very good. And with those lovely paths that are coming up through St. Helena's, there'll be a cycle path, and then there's a lovely meandering path with resting areas.
Yeah, because we're at a height there is a slope, so we're really going to have two separate access with a strip between it, which will be planted, which will also be part of our drainage concepts. And it'll mean that if you're not, it's all very well going down the hill, but going up the hill, if you want to take a breather, or if you're not going as fast on your bike because maybe somebody behind you, there'll be spaces to be able to step off, have a rest, enjoy the view, and continue on your journey.
Very good. And going through Farnham Park, we're kind of skirting the perimeter of the park, so like you say, the pitches will still be usable.
They'll still be usable, but again, the survey we did of people using the space shows that especially at weekends there's a lot of sports which tend to be predominantly boys, so again we'll be looking at ways to maybe bring uses for girls into the park as well, which is part of the focus we have on gender equality, to bring all people into the spaces.
Fantastic. And Marcello, maybe if you'd like to tell us about the stop platforms themselves. We're standing here where St. Helena's stop is going to be, so
yeah.
Describe that.
So St. Helena's stop will be located on the upper part of the St. Helena's Park, St. Helena's Green. At the moment the green is completely fenced off, so it will be open because the Lewis has to pass through, and also the cycle lanes will pass through. So really in Finglas we had an incredible opportunity with this Lewis line, because we're not in the city centre, so we had kind of a blank canvas, and we're trying to take advantage advantage of that by enhancing the use of the parks together with the use of the Luas. So we had an opportunity to lay out the stops in a very uncluttered and consistent manner. So the furniture are set out in a uniform way, which makes things much easier for blind users in particular. So, for example, the stops will have all the typical features of the Lua stops, like low platforms, level boarding with tactile paving, help points, lighting, CCTV, passenger information display, and all the typical Luas onboard facilities. There is going to be a very good high-level standard of footpath links with the stops and pedestrian crossings. And then don't forget there is a bus service here. The 40 and 220 are adjacent to the stop, so there will be very good links between the bus stops and the Lua stop for interchange of passengers.
Good. So again, there'll be plenty of activity and loads of interconnectivity.
Absolutely. That's one of the strong points of Luas Finglas, is interconnecting all the public transport facilities in the area.
Excellent. So when the tram leaves St. Helena's, like I say, it'll cross St. Helena's Road and it'll go on the east side of Farnham Park and then cut its way north. So let's move up to where we're proposing to have the Luas Finglas stop.
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
So we're standing now outside Finglas Sports Centre and Finglas Fitness Club on Mellows Road. We're in a kind of a fairly large surface car park. So maybe, Marcello, if you tell us firstly about the route to here, like we were at St. Helena's a while ago. How will the route have got from St. Helena's to here?
Exactly, yeah. So from St. Helena's stop, as we said, we would be running along Farnham Drive, so just to the east side of the Farnham pitches, as we spoke about just before. Then the line will continue northward, towards north, and along Casement Road, essentially. So there is a large green area in front of Casement Road. That's where the Luas will be, on grass track again, with a significant intervention from landscaping point of view. So then the line will run to the east side of Patrickswell Place Road, and the road itself will have to be pushed against towards the west, just to make space for the line, for the Luas line. Then finally we cross Kappa Road there, and we run along Cardiff Castle Road. So the line continues along the north, just to the east side of Cardiff Castle Road. Finally, we're crossing the Garda Station car park, because if you know the area, the Garda Station has a large car park just beside the building, and we need to cross that car park to cross Mellows Road onto the new Luas Finglas Village stop, which is just located where the Finglas Sports and Fitness facilities, the Finglas Youth Resource Centre, just in front of the municipal facilities here. So that's essentially how the alignment will work. There will be a new plaza here with a new tree planting and seating all around the Luas stop. The Luas stop, you can imagine, is just parallel to the road here. And there will be interchanges with the bus services to Blanchardstown and Tyrrellstown. There is going to be a significant and important bike hub on the back of the stop, so direct access to Casement Road from the bicycle parking. We're thinking to remove the main car parking area in front of the swimming pool, but because there is a crash here, the crash parking will remain in place, including some disabled parking spaces just here at the plaza. Finglas Village is just to say that the stop is named the Finglas Village. Well, actually Finglas Village is about 250 meters away, but it's a very short walking distance over the bridge, over the N2 road, and you'll be just at Finglas Village in the Five Arms Junction for people that know the area. There will be an improved walking environment, so the stop will be very accessible from all the areas.
Excellent. And Emer, just from an urban design and landscape point of view, what kind of considerations will need to be taken into account when we're designing this space?
Well, what we really want to do is to make a space here. So we have this really important collection of community buildings and sports buildings, and at the moment it's dominated by car parking to the front. As we're standing here, the sun is shining, it's south facing, it could be a really lovely spot. So in combination with the space that the Luas will be taking over from the car parking, we'll then be able to give back space for seating, for people to wait if you're waiting for somebody to come out of the creche. There's also your bike interchange. An important element as well is that there are really nice trees along Mellows Road, so we're really doing all we can to maintain that mature structure of landscape,
Sure.
and then adding to it with more landscaping. But really we want to make the Lewis stop to be a safe, accessible place, really, that you feel comfortable waiting for the Lewis, you feel comfortable if you're waiting for somebody to get off the Lewis or to meet them, and it will transform the space here to a much more people-centred spot.
Excellent. And Deirdre, you've been involved in several other projects, public transport projects, and in some recent public consultations. So in terms of feedback you're getting, particularly from people with disabilities, what are the recurring issues that come up?
So what we hear time and time again is accessibility, as in, is the stop in a useful place? Can I get to it easily? Can I be dropped off at it? Can I get a bus to this place? And then when I'm there, can I access whatever public transport I'm trying to access? Can I get onto it? Emer's talked about how really the space is going to be transformed, and that'll lead to increased safety as well. It'll become a more pleasant place to sit while you're waiting, and so therefore it'll be a safer space and it'll be a more attractive space, all of which I suppose adds to the area, to the experience of you travelling. Reliability is key. I mean, that's something we hear, particularly with a disability, that there's good information if there's any sort of an issue with the Lewis, the bus, the tram, whatever you're planning to get, that you know in advance, because a journey might be more complicated for you. Yeah. So that's really important. And I think we mentioned before about the layout of the stops in terms of information and in terms of how they feel is consistent. So you know where you are and you know where to find the things that you need.
Very good. And I know that from the Lewis user groups that I attend, a big issue is the potential conflict between e-mobility and vulnerable walkers.
Yeah,
so
that's something that
we're hearing
that we're hearing that, and that's a big issue, and it's only on the rise as well, as e-scooters and e-bikes become more and more popular. So it's really important that we have clearly defined areas for walkers, as opposed to anyone who's on a bike, or indeed, as you mentioned, the car parking, to try and keep that separate, so that if you are a little bit slower maybe on your feet, that you feel safe in accessing an area and you're not going to get run over by somebody.
And particular care then in the design of shared spaces and plazas,
that it's intuitive and you know where you're supposed to be, and that you can easily access where you need. And as Emer mentioned, some of the, including seating, so if you're tired and you need to just take a rest, that will be available to you at the stops.
Very good. So Emer, maybe if you could describe where the tram is going from here.
Okay, well, we will arrive in front of the community buildings here. As you say, it's south facing, it's going to be a really nice plaza. Then we will go up towards Finglas Village and then turn left up Mellows Park, up along the line of the N2, which is at a lower level, kind of in a valley. We'll be in Mellows Park, which is at the higher level. So it's separate from all of the roadways. It's, again, going within a green space to intensify the use within that green space. Again, as Marcello said, there's going to be green grass track along there, and one of the important elements, as we said before, was understanding who uses Mellows Park. So there's a lot of people who are dog walkers, there are a lot of people who use there's a play area there. So again, we'll need to design all our stops and all our crossing points taking into account the existing park users, but again looking to see where we can bring more people into the park, and so that's our hope when we follow through to the roundabout at the Finglas Road.
Okay, so we'll just head up now to, I think, Margaret's roundabout and pick it up from there as well. Thank you. Right, so we're standing now outside what is currently Pizza Hut on St. Margaret's Road, opposite Lidl. And to get here we had to cross over the Finglas Road, the N2, there's a pedestrian bridge that crosses that road, and that's how people on foot or on bike cross that Margaret's Road roundabout at the moment. Emer, maybe you would tell us just a little bit about how that whole roundabout and road area will change for the better for pedestrians, we hope.
Well, I mean, part of the key is that this is known as the Finglas Road, whereas we want to turn it into a street. And one of the ways to do that is to reduce the number of traffic lanes, to have pedestrian crossings that allow people to cross at grade, so you don't have to go over a pedestrian bridge. So that's one of the key changes here, is that the roundabout is going to be converted into a junction which has proper crossings and proper facilities for cyclists as well.
Okay.
Because when you think of it, we have traffic coming off the M50, coming down to this roundabout and speeding through into town, but actually this is a really important link between the two communities in Finglas. So we want to slow down traffic, make it a safe crossing point, create a linkage between the new housing areas and the older housing areas in Finglas, and make a safer space for an interchange at this point.
Excellent. So there's also going to be a Lewis stop here opposite the Lidl. What'll that look like?
Well, again, the Lewis stop, we're looking at the moment, this space is so dominated by the road that we want to have make a place around the Lewis stop. So again, we will have good quality materials, we will have bike parking, we will have landscaping, and again, the most important part is that we will have really good connections to all of the communities around. So from the Lewis stop here, because the road junction will be tightened, there'll be much better visibility, it'll be a safer spot, and we're opposite Lidl, which is an attractor in itself, but at the moment it's very difficult for people in Finglas even to cross the North Road to get to Lidl.
Yep.
So all of that just will make it much more a pedestrian and a cyclist-focused space and take the priority away from road
And of
traffic.
course, then you've got the Jamestown Industrial Estate, and there are plans for that. It's been rezoned, and there's probably going to be a fair amount of housing and new uses for that industrial estate.
And it's a huge opportunity because there's a big area of land, as you say here, that's going to be developed over time to create a new neighbourhood really in Finglas. So we'll have the old neighbourhood, the established neighbourhood, this new neighbourhood, and the Lewis stop really will be a connection between the two of them and a way to safely travel around their new neighbourhoods.
Excellent. And there'll be routes, kind of green routes, cycle routes through that potentially as well.
Absolutely, and not just cyclists on the road. There will be cycle routes for all ranges and types of users. So we're not just thinking about people going from A to B. We're thinking about school children crossing the road to go to maybe the new schools, to go to shops, to head up to Charlesland. So it's really focusing on the people who live here and giving a space that they can navigate safely.
Very good. And Marcello, there's a proposal at the moment still in planning to have a park and ride near the stop. So tell us a little bit about that, how that'll work.
Sure. Yeah, the park and rides will be located just on the other side of the road from the stop. So it will be located where the Lidl supermarket is at the moment. So we are speaking with Lidl, and we're trying to develop a plan which will be a joint plan together with them. And essentially, Park and Ride will be in the form of a multi-story car park, 3 to 4 stories, accessible from the North Road. So it is dedicated to traffic coming in the city from the M50. Mm-hmm. There will be a direct right turn into the Park and Ride, into the multi-story facility on the back of the Lidl, and then there would be a walk-in link through the Lidl site onto the Lewis stop across Margaret's Road. So It will be very well linked directly to the stop. The idea would be that traffic will enter directly into the Park and Ride and exit from the Park and Ride towards the M50 on the North Road only.
Right.
There will not be traffic accessing the Park and Ride from Margaret's Road.
Right.
Margaret's Road would still retain the access to the shopping centre, to the Lidl supermarket, and Lidl will not have a combined access with the Park and Ride. So just to explain, the Park and Ride and Lidl would have different
separate
accesses.
Okay.
The other good thing to say is that there are going to be 350 car parking spaces within the Park and Ride, plus bicycle secure parking spaces as well. Some of them will be e-charging spaces for electric vehicles. We're thinking about 20%, but this is still under discussion. And then there will be enough number of disabled parking spaces in the Park and Ride itself. And clearly the connectivity between the Park and Ride and the stop will all be accessible for wheelchair users at grade.
Very good. So that'll help, I suppose, keep traffic out of the city centre to some extent and get people at the kind of outer edges onto public transport. And
that's the idea, yes.
And made easier for everybody to get on and off. And so we're at the bottom of Margaret's Road here, like I say, outside Lidl. We're close to the terminus now. We're not too far, but maybe if you describe the route as it travels up Jamestown.
Exactly. As you said, this is just before the last stop. So this is there is another 700 meters to run before the terminus. Essentially, the Luas will run off-road to the east side of Margaret's Road. There is going to be a two-way green track on this side with planting new trees, so the road will look significantly different from what it is today. The road will be shifted slightly to the west, and it will be made of two lanes and two cycle lanes as well, plus a green buffer either side, and then you can imagine the Luas on a green strip to the east. So the line will terminate at Charlestown, which is just opposite the shopping centre and the tower of Charlestown, the residential building. There will be an interchange with buses there, significant interchange with all Bus Connects, which is the future of the buses in Dublin. There will be cycle facilities, and the road junction there at Charlestown will be totally redesigned to make it easier for pedestrians to cross, essentially. So the junction will be squeezed and will be smaller, will be easier to cross and more accessible for pedestrian and cycle users as well. Excellent. So that's the idea, traffic calming, providing good quality public transport in a good quality green setting, essentially.
Fantastic. So I suppose once the Jamestown, if we think of this area, say 5-10 years from now, you'll have the Jamestown industrial estate significantly redeveloped. You'll have a green linear Lewis route running up and down St. Margaret's Road, and of course your cycle and walking routes as well, which is quite a change. Okay, so I mean if we think about the terminus, really that's the end of our line for the time being. Emer, maybe you'd like to just talk a little bit more about Charlestown stop itself. I know you had been speaking to locals about maybe using the space as well.
Yeah, again, one of the key things at Charlestown is that it's so difficult to cross the road up there. So even for a resident to come and walk with their kids over to the cinema or to the ice cream shop in Charlestown Centre is a real ordeal at the moment. So by reducing the number of lanes, we're taking space away from the carriageway, and we're giving that back to pedestrians, to landscaping, to make a better place, really. There are some local community activists around the area who take great pride in their community, and we've been talking to those, and we really want to incorporate their aspirations for their neighbourhood into the stop area, because it is the entrance to their housing areas as well. So to really make Charlestown, at the moment it's a town of two parts. You have the shopping centre and the housing areas. We're hoping that the Lewis and the reduced road will make it seem more like, again, a place that is joined and is linked together, so that will be a major change at that junction.
Fantastic. So Deirdre, what's the next stage in terms of public consultation?
Well, we're going to go out with to apply for a railway order in 2023 with On Board Planola, and that is a statutory public consultation, and that will run for quite a while, and we'll have drawings and all the information available in our offices, but also online. We had a virtual consultation room that we had to use for COVID, but it actually worked really, really well, because a lot of people, it's just easier, either they can't come into us or don't want to, and it's available 24/7, so we'll be going with that model as well. So that is the formal opportunity, or the opportunity to provide formal feedback on the scheme. But between now and then, we're just constantly, as Emer said, we're meeting with people, different, the user groups, disability groups, local residents, businesses, and we're continuing to engage with them as we're refining the design, and we'll keep doing that between now and then, and where possible, take on board feedback that we're hearing.
And for the statutory public consultation, obviously the material will be in an accessible format, etc.
Absolutely.
And if people do want face-to-face meetings during that,
we welcome that, yeah. And even in advance of that, if anyone wants further information, or we've said anything here today and people have picked up on it and would like to get a bit more information already, they can go onto our website, which is lewisfinglas.ie. We've got a dedicated free phone number, which I don't remember offhand, but we'll put it on the website beside this podcast. But we have info@lewisfinglas.ie is the email, and that's always monitored. But also they can get through, I believe, through yourself, through the Lewis user group, we always welcome.
Door is always open,
and we welcome questions from everyone.
Excellent. So finally, everybody, we couldn't have had nicer weather, not wedding. We couldn't have had nicer weather, and we've walked the route and hopefully kind of conveyed what the project is all about. But I know everybody loves working on this project. There are so many kind of positive things about it, and everyone's working to make it a great project. So I'm just going to ask each of you before we finish, how you think, if you were to say one thing that you think the project will benefit, will be of most benefit to people at the end of the day. So, maybe we'll start with you, Marcello.
Yeah, Sarah, no, thanks. We're very enthusiastic of this project. First of all, there is a great team in TII and in our consultant as well. We're all working hard to get it across the line to onboard Planola, as Deirdre said, at the end of the 2023. So for planning permission, we're hoping it will get delivered earlier than what we said initially, depending on the new National Development Plan. But what we think is that this project will benefit all the communities along the route, in Finglas and Charlestown, users outside the M50 through the park and ride, and will finally bring the Green Line. So I would say the Green Line will finally become a north to south, M50 to M50 connector through the core of the city centre. We could actually call it the university line, the campus line, because it crosses all the main universities of the cities and will bring so much social inclusion to the city from the north to the south. So that's an important aspect of this project, together with the landscape aspect of the project, which Emer, I'm sure, will speak about.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah.
So Emer, how about you? How do you think it'll...
Well, the same as everybody has said, it's been a really brilliant project to work on, and we're looking at really new ways of looking at public transport. So we're looking at sustainability, we're looking at circular economy, we're looking at the importance of biodiversity, and most importantly, we're really looking at the community that we're serving by this line, and there's such a vibrant community in Finglas, and we're really aware of the use that they make of the spaces. So what I see the real merits of Lewis Finglas is that it's a connecting project. We're connecting community to the city centre. We're locally connecting spaces that have been fenced off. We're connecting biodiversity by creating planted corridors. We're connecting the schools and community facilities to cycling and walking routes. So the opportunity to bring a project that has so many connections and possible connections, I think, is a really positive and a really exciting way to approach it.
Well said.
And that's it for this episode. A huge thank you to our guests, Marcello, Emer and Deirdre. We hope you enjoyed our conversation about the future Lewis Finglas project. Thank you to our host, Sarah O'Donnell, to Trevor Cudden on sound, to our production team, Kathleen Jacoby, Rachel Cahill and Claire Scott, to Sinead Foley from TU Dublin, who designed our fantastic graphics, and to everyone else who helped make this podcast. Please send us your comments and feedback via allaboard@tii.ie. For more episodes from All Aboard, please go to Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time.